But you're the man in charge.
I'm Johnny.
Nothing. I saw you squaring off with them guys. What do I need to think for?
Hey, Johnny, hey!
In 1965, in Chicago, a girl named Kathy Bauer went on a date to see her friend at a bar that happens to be a hangout for the guys from one of the famous motorcycle gangs in the town. At first, she is scared because of her presence among these guys. Still, moments later, she is attracted to one of the tough members of the Vandal Motorcycle Club, Benny Cross. Her friend warns her that no one is willing to enter a relationship with him because he has crashed his motorcycle many times. A few minutes later, Benny sits beside her and smiles at her. After him, Vandals founder Johnny Davis joins her and assures her that she doesn't need to worry about anything. Kathy comes out of the bar and Benny immediately leaves after her and gets on his motorcycle. Then, with their encouragement and support, the club members force Kathy to get on Benny's motorcycle. Photography student Danny Lyon travels with the Vandals to make his documentary, and now Kathy shares her story with him. She explains that she experienced memorable moments that night and says that she married Benny just 5 weeks later. Benny, the rebellious boy of the club, usually caused trouble for himself by violating the driving rules, and the police were always chasing him. However, Johnny loved him so much that he always differentiated between Benny and the other club members. Danny learns from Kathy that Johnny was inspired to create the club after watching Marlon Brando in The Wild One. She explains that Vandal was initially a small racing club with only 12 members. Notable members include Wahoo and Corky from Chicago, Illinois. Brucey, one of the group members from day one, was almost Johnny's right-hand man.
Can you think of anyone better than us?
Cal, who joined Vandal from California. He mentions that once he could reassemble a motorcycle that had practically fallen apart, he was now somehow considered the group's mechanic. Cockroach, whose father has been buying him a motorcycle since he was 15, claims to be a Cockroach fan. The other is Zipko from Latvia and one of the oldest members of the Vandals. Kathy explains that Johnny's leadership was challenged when he rejected a Vandals offer to allow new chapters to form. One day, Brucey explains that they will put a phone behind the bar so that guys can call in case of emergency and when they go to jail. Johnny is going to pay for the calls personally. So Johnny warns that members are not allowed to make private phone calls. Big Jack disagrees with his opinion and decides to challenge him. There are two options, fist and knife. Since Jack doesn't intend to kill Johnny, he chooses fists and fights at a picnic. After a hard fight, Johnny defeats Jack and kicks him out of the group. He reasserts his authority, but allows the club to expand anyway. Their authoritative presence on motorbikes and driving in the streets makes some kids wish to become members of the group. By their presence in family picnics, Vandals try to show their unity and power to the citizens. At one of these picnics, while Danny is interviewing Zipko, Johnny immediately goes to Cal, who is arguing with one of his customers, who also happens to be part of a motorcycle gang. Johnny tries to stop the fight. Suddenly, when Benny realizes his friends are in trouble, he punches the man in the face and the fight starts. During the fight, Benny punches the car window and gets injured, so Johnny tries to stop him. The fight ends with an agreement between the two sides, and the Bikeriders gangs reconcile and gather together. Johnny asks what he thought when attacked like that and is happy when he realizes Benny did it to get his back. Back to the now, Kathy explains to Danny that people often hate Vandals for creating chaos in the city, and that's why they don't dare to wear club jackets when they're alone. In 1969, one day when Benny was alone in the bar, two men disturbed him and tried to force him to take off his jacket with threats. But Benny refused to do so, and this caused a conflict. Benny wounds one of them with a knife, but the other one hits him with a shovel so badly that Benny almost loses one of his legs. Kathy claims that she had never seen Benny cry before and explains that the reason why he was crying in the hospital was not because of pain, but because he was worried that he would not be able to ride anymore. Johnny learns about this and angrily goes to the bar and asks the owner to give him the names, and then he will let him live. He orders Brucey to do something with these guys so that they can't walk for the rest of their lives, and then he sets the bar on fire to serve as a lesson to people not to mess with Vandals anymore. After a few days, Johnny visits Benny, and invites him to join them in a 3-week picnic. Kathy is upset to hear that because she doesn't want her husband hurt because of his bike and club membership. After Johnny leaves, Kathy tries to dissuade Benny but fails.
The doctor said 3 to 4 months with no weight on it.
I should just go.
So she decides to meet Johnny to talk to him personally about this matter. Still, Johnny ignores her words because he is very interested in Benny. A group of troubled kids show up on the picnic with their villainous leader, who questions Wahoo about club membership and who's in charge. Wahoo shows Johnny to him. Moments later, a bike rider named Funny Sonny, who came from California, attracts the attention of Johnny and the others. He gives Johnny money and hopes he will spend a few days with them, and then the group spends happy moments together like a family. That night, Johnny pulls Benny aside to discuss his successor. He explains that the group has grown so much that he doesn't know the new guys, and he insists that he may be unable to handle the group's leadership, so he asks him to accept this responsibility. Even though Benny doesn't accept his request, Johnny believes he is the only one in the group who deserves this position and asks him to think about that.
It's yours.
Back to now. In her story, Kathy tells Danny that she misses Brucey and mentions that in 1973, things started to change at the club after he died in a tragic accident. His parents, hating Johnny and his group, opposed their participation in Brucey's funeral because they considered them guilty. Ignoring Brucey's parents, Johnny's decision to participate in the burial of his old friend is definite, but he faces their humiliation and insults. After that, one night, a 20-year-old delinquent with his friends shows up at the bar to get permission from Johnny to join Vandal. But Johnny refuses and says we don't take kids. Johnny initially dismisses them, but at kids' insistence decides to just test him by letting him in. After seeing their motorbikes, Johnny says that he will only accept him, not his friends, and rejects him when he realizes the kid is abandoning his friends to join the club.
No. What kind of piece of shit are you again? Yeah, I want to see you out here ever again.
Johnny! Hey, Johnny, hey!
Emphasizing that the club's condition was worsening, Kathy tells Danny that, at that time, the club was divided between 2 groups of old guys and new guys. The problem was that the new guys believed in some made-up stuff that didn't matter. Many of them were using drugs, and this situation greatly disappointed Johnny. While talking to 3 new guys, Cockroach drunkenly reveals that things are getting boring for him, and he has decided to turn in his jacket and join the police force. His words upset them, so they decide to punish him severely for his decision to leave the club. When Johnny finds out about this, he calls Benny and a few others and asks them to take Cockroach to the hospital. At the same time, Kathy is about to be raped in the absence of her husband and her friend. Still, fortunately, Johnny eventually arrives and manages to save her with difficulty by punishing the new guys. A few days later, Cockroach, with a scarred face and broken hand, informs Johnny that the new guys are crazy. He also promises his wife he will hand over his jacket, but he fears the consequences. He tells Johnny that he needs his help, and Johnny promises to take care of him. After Cockroach leaves, Johnny asks Benny to go home and get his gun. Benny goes back to the house to take the gun from the drawer. Suddenly, Kathy appears and tells him she wants to tell him something. She admits that she can't live like this anymore. She blames Benny for not being there the night they tried to rape her, and asks him to leave the ride in the club and hand over his jacket. Benny is sorry for those events, but he has no intention of leaving the club, and Kathy's insistence makes Benny think that their relationship is over and leaves her, making her cry. To allow Cockroach to safely leave the club, Johnny takes Benny to stage a break-in at his house, where he shoots him non-fatally in the leg. While Benny is shocked, Johnny asks Cockroach to leave town forever. Benny, disturbed by the club's increasing violence and Johnny's behavior, gets out of the car and again rejects Johnny's leadership offer. Johnny admits he can no longer run the club, but Benny resigns and leaves Chicago for unknown parts.
It's not me. Never gonna be me.
The kid, now a member of the Milwaukee Vandals, meets Johnny with some of his friends. He says he wants to challenge him with a knife. Johnny agrees and arranges a fight with him tomorrow night in a parking lot in Fuller by the lake. The next day, he leaves his wife as if he will see her for the last time. He then meets Kathy to ask her if Benny has come or not. Kathy informs her that the last she heard from him was that he was going to Indiana with some of his friends, and they were both upset about losing Benny. She thinks something is wrong with Johnny and asks him twice what you need, but he just says nothing and gets into his car and leaves. It was so cold that night that Wahoo and Corky watched the challenge inside the car. The kid and his friend arrive late, and Johnny prepares to fight, knife in hand. The kid pulls out his gun in disbelief and shoots Johnny to kill him. The golden age of bikers ends after he is killed, and the kid replaces him. Kathy explains to Lion that after the kid took over the Vandals, they became a large criminal gang involved in drug trafficking and murder. The older members either fell in line, left to obtain legitimate jobs, or died. After a few days in a bar in Indiana, Benny learns through his friends that Johnny has been killed. While saddened by this tragedy, he leaves the bar and returns to Chicago. When Kathy sees him sitting on the steps outside the house, she sits beside him and hugs Benny, who has never cried for anyone. He and Kathy relocated to Florida, where Benny works as a mechanic and has stopped riding motorcycles. Kathy tells Danny they are happy and Benny won't miss the biker lifestyle. Outside, Benny hears motorcycles nearby and wistfully smiles at her.